Well, Jim, we aren't having much luck finding our last
elk.
maple.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll bring its namesake along, okay?
Okay.
An ash leaf?
Ash leaf.
Okay.
And the box elder is part of the maple family.
Yep. It's called, one of its names is called an ash leaf maple. I think if anybody ever saw the seed of a box elder, then they'll know it's a maple, but from its bark and its appearance, its form, and its leaves, it sure doesn't look like one, but
One of those little...
sometimes you don't always look like your relatives too, right?
Right. One of those little helicopter seeds.
Yep.
Well, this is August, the last summer month. And our friends at Vermont Woodlands, again, they always have what we find in August. The Jefferson salamander larvae lose their gills and leave their breeding ponds. Many travel a few hundred yards before they locate a summering territory in adjacent woodlands. The large gray-brown adults prefer semi-permanent and permanent pools in which to lay their eggs.
The large longhorn beetles, which you're going to see shortly on the show, can be seen at dusk following the smell of freshly cut wood. Woodland asters begin blooming in forested areas, the first of many aster species to bloom. Dead terminal shoots of white pines killed by the white pine weevil are now evident.
In the third week of August, a host of birds are shipping out. Barn, tree, and cliff swallows, bobolinks, meadowlarks, Baltimore orioles, and spotted sandpipers, to name but a few. The last of the snowshoe hare young are born. Females may produce up to 3 litters, beginning in May.
Goldfinches may still have young in the nest. Bald eagles, which bred in the southern states during the winter and summer north of here, are now heading south.
Well, we've gathered quite a few different leaves here. They're all from the same family of trees.
Yep, the maple family.
And maple is well known in the state. It is our state tree.
Our state, yep, that's right, yeah.
Also the state tree of some other states, I guess.
And it's a Canadian flag.
Canadian flag?
Yep.
It is
Some people call it a foliage flag.
Oh yes,
yeah.
That's right,
yeah.
foliage flag.
Yeah.
But it is the largest population of trees we have in the state are of the maple family.
Oh, by far, right.
And predominantly, I guess, the hard maple, sugar maple, rock maple, and do we have some more names for the same kind of tree?
We'll try to not make it sound as confusing, but we do have a lot of, let's see, we have 2, 4, 6, we have 7 here on the on our board today, and each of those probably has about 3 or 4 different names. So we just picked one name, and we'll tell you about its other names. Why don't we start at the top there, Claude? You introduce that one.
This one up here, the striped maple, I guess I call it a weed tree, in a way. There's no commercial value to it or anything. It doesn't get very big. I guess it comes about when there's some disturbance in the forest and a little bit of an opening created. It grows quite quickly, I guess. It's a very soft wood, very brittle too. It's one of the few woods that you can very easily snap right completely off and not have it hang together much. It has some nicknames, moose maple, I guess, or moose wood.
Goosefoot maple, because the leaf looks like a goosefoot print.
And the noted striping on the branches is, I guess, the characteristic that gave it its name.
Its most common name, I think, yeah.
And I guess about the only use.
I think every Boy Scout knows it for one, well, maybe 2, but one thing that we'll talk about today, and that's it makes the best hot dog or marshmallow stick there is. It's got that ability, like you said, to break right in 2, so you can snap off a branch, or it's a stiff tree.
And just one little cut.
Yeah. And you got your...
Got a point enough?
Yeah.
You got any hot dogs in your pocket?
No, I wish I did.
So, the hot dog stick.
Yep.
These are hard to come by other than this. You don't find them at Walmart or anywhere
No,
else.
no. Throughout all Vermont's forest, though, we have hot dog stick.
Yep. What else do we have?
Okay, I guess we should say striped maple, if it got to be 6 inches in diameter, would be a large striped maple tree.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Very common at 1 inch or 2 inches in diameter, but not much, very rare above that.
and it's got its name as moose maple, I guess, because the moose like eating the bark from it.
Mhm.
And I have seen places where it was quite thick, along around that 5 or 6 inch diameter, 20 feet high, and moose would just kind of walk into the tree and slowly keep bending it over
With their chest
and go along and just be ripping the bark off it all the way up through.
Mhm.
It almost looked like a piece of heavy equipment went through the woods. And just the moose knocking it down and eating the bark. Quite something to see.
Okay, another tree, the next tree is a mountain maple, and a mountain maple is not a full-grown tree either, but a large bush, I guess, but it has one stem to it, and it gets to be maybe 3 or 4 inches in diameter. It'd be a large one. It grows on the mountains, but also grows down to probably about 1,000 feet in elevation throughout Vermont too, but more common up high on the mountain, in the understory.
And I guess the trademark of that one is the serrated edges of the leaf.
Sawtooth edge looks just like a saw edge of the leaf. And it's the color of its stem is different than a woody colored thing. It has a red and it has a green and color to it, the stem and the bark of the tree.
Like the straight maple, that would have snapped by
Yep.
now, but this
Yeah.
doesn't like to come apart.
Do you want to do the next one?
Well, then our most common known maple is the sugar maple, also called hard maple,
Rock maple.
rock maple.
All the same tree. And that's our most common tree in the whole state.
It's one of the most valuable trees, and the most common tree by far, I guess.
Yeah.
And it occurs probably at all elevations.
Yep.
A lot of trees maybe aren't down real low or up real high, but the hard maple, sugar maple, seems to cover
Yeah.
the range.
Very
of the complete.
valuable for furniture, for great firewood, gives us our maple syrup, gives us great fall color, and it's our most common tree in the state. I think like 25% of all trees in the state are sugar maples.
So if you step out in a wooded area, there's a good chance you're going to see a maple tree right there.
Yep, yep. Okay, the next one on our board is a cutleaf maple, also called a silver maple. Not a native to southern Vermont. It's an ornamental tree here. Not very good ornamental either, but fast-growing trees, which people that don't have patience kind of like, I guess. But it's suffers from a lot of ice damage, so if it's around your house, you don't want to keep it trimmed up pretty well, or you're going to get a lot of lawn cleanup throughout the year, or throughout the storm season in the winter anyway.
One thing with the cutleaf maple, and also another one we have here, is that the underside of the leaf are kind of silvery in color. And when they say leaves start to turn up before a storm and things, it's always very noticeable on those trees, the silver type color. When the wind blows the tree, it just changes color instantly, like from the leaves being in the normal orientation.
I guess we should back up a little, and all the trees we talked about for fall color, we only had one so far the sugar has any color besides just a yellow. The rest of the trees, well, yellow's a color, I guess, but it's not a very exciting color all by itself. Mixed in with the other ones it is, but the cutleaf maple just turns a kind of a blah yellow and falls to the ground.
Then we have the soft maple, which I guess is also known as the red maple.
Yep.
Its characteristics as a fuel wood are not as good as the hard maple, which is the best fuel wood on the page here. This also has that kind of noticeable grayness underneath. The shape of the leaf, some of the main veins of the leaf here, a lot of the others tend to have 5. These seem to have only maybe 3.
R-E-D, 3 letters, 3 points.
3 letters, 3 veins.
Yeah. 5 points, 5 letters for sugar. So this gives us, some people say it's called red because of the red buds on it. Some people say it's called red because of the red inner bark on the tree. And some people say it's red because it turns redder in the fall than the other ones. And it gives us a real good red color in the woods.
In the springtime, these buds will be considerably larger than the sugar maple earlier. And in the fall, actually within a couple weeks now in the higher elevations, especially around wetland
swamps,
areas, they will start to turn. That's the first color that starts to show up of the red colors. And I guess the soft maple can be about as colorful as the hard maple.
I think it's more, well, I guess I like red, so, I mean, you think this is red until you see this, and then you say, well, that's not red, that's orange, because this is really red.
But this doesn't go through quite the spectrum of colors to get there that the hard maple does, or is that?
Well, that again, if you saw the two of them, and I guess maybe our next show we can do that.
You can have the oranges here, but I don't know that
we'll put that on, and everybody will say that's red, and then we'll put this next to it, and you say that's not red, that's orange.
And this also occurs at about all elevations.
All elevations, yeah. A wide variety of sites.
What do we have on this leaf right here?
Those are houses for mites. Those are called gall mites, and they're a little insect that causes a swelling of the leaf, and the swelling of the leaf makes a house for the little mite to live in. So those are mite houses. And the mite doesn't do any damage to the leaf. It's like a person having dandruff. It's just something different, but it's not any damage to the leaf. The whole leaf is still intact. They're unable to make food. You remember what a goldenrod looks like? What most goldenrods look like?
And when they have the gall in the stem?
Yeah. And that's another thing where a plant reacts to an insect chewing or feeding and causes a swelling, and it's a home for the worms. If you cut that open, you'll see the worms in there of a wasp.
And they winter over right there.
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah. And it's so common that most people think goldenrod has a swelling on it somewhere. One to a goldenrod.
Right. Well, this is quite a different colored maple for summertime. Norway maple. I guess the not to be confused with red maple, which is an ornamental tree. But this is not originally native here, but it does grow here in places.
Yeah, the strictly an ornamental tree, doesn't grow in the forest, comes in dark green varieties, deep burgundy like this one. Some start the spring as a burgundy, turn to green. Later in the year, some start green, turn to burgundy. Some stay green, some stay burgundy. So depending on what variety, but those are ones you buy at a nursery. And you can't grow grass underneath the Norway maple.
The canopy of the leaves is
so dense,
thick
dark,
that it doesn't let the sunlight come through.
Yeah. And you'll have roots underneath there. So if you tried to put a lawnmower up there wouldn't be anything to cut in there. But it's one disadvantage. A tough tree could grow right in concrete, but you're not going to have a lawn underneath it. Okay, our last one, the one we just found over there, our fake one, I guess, is called, this is really an ash leaf, but the other maple that we have in Vermont that's a native is a box elder. I think most people call it a trash tree. It's very subject to breakage. Its leaves don't look anything like the rest of the maples on the page. I think everybody could pick those leaves up in the woods, not know what it was, but say, I know it's in the maple family. Well, this one And this is its leaf. It's made up of leaflets. That's one leaf, and it's called a box elder. What other names are there? Ash leaf maple and box elder. And you remember Hennis Michelson with his wooden hats?
Yes.
That's the only use I ever heard for those trees is Hennis Michelson likes that because the wood has red streaks in it, and he likes to make his wooden hats out of box elder.
And how large a tree will that become?
20 inches in diameter. Yeah. It's common along rivers and the villages and the people that live in the villages that the seeds will land anywhere and get a start and be in your yard. No color in the fall, not a lot of usage, a lot of breakage of the tree again. And nobody ever planted it, but it's a very aggressive cedar around villages.
Well, this month we're going to be going into the woods in Wethersfield, Vermont, with Dennis Willey, and see him do some logging with his horses. So that's a little bit change. And then we also are going to have Barbara Burns, and she's going to tell us about
pests of maple, insects and disease,
and Barbara's with Vermont Forest and Parks from Springfield.
Yep.
She was
She's
with us
going
last winter.
she's going to be talking to a group of people, maple producers, sugar makers from throughout the country and Canada too, explaining the insect and disease problems we find in Vermont.
And I think Bruin's having a cave sale.
A cave sale.
I don't know if his cave is up for sale or just what that is. We'll have to go
It's
and
like
take
a
a look.
garage sale. They don't sell garages.
That could be.
Better tune in and find out, huh?
Yeah. Well, Jim, we've got some litter of leaves here to dispose of. And
Okay.
we'll clean up the picnic area, and we'll go on our way.
And next month we're going to the windmills.
To the windmills?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's an attic sale. Bruin must be having one someplace. I'd like to know where he is. There's the sign. Garage sales, barn sales. I'd like to know where this is. It's going to be interesting.
Well, they're having a moving sale, kids.
Wow. Tag sale? Basement sale? What do you think? A boat sale. You want to go see the boat? Whoa. Don't see.
The sale is this way.
This way, sir?
This way.
Hey, we found the cave sale, Brian.
Grab it, tell you, pretend you're buying it. Is that plastic containers there?
Yep.
Well, this is where I live. This is my cave. Yeah, my frog fell over, but I have this pet frog there. You saw him earlier. If you see my cave, look at it. It's pretty neat, isn't it? I even got it upstairs. You go up around the corner there, and look at that. You go all the way up. That's where my lookout tower is. See that hole right up in there? That's where it is, right up there. I can go up there and I can see if anybody's coming. And there's my other friend Toad. See him over there? He's a good guy. And that's Spooky up there on the shelf. Spooky has visitors playing around with him every now and then. Yeah. Well, did I show you my shower? Look around, look out right out there. That's where my shower is. And then I have a little ledge there. A little balcony actually. I can just sit there. I can watch the sun come up. Oh yeah, I thought I'd come up here and show you. Look at this, isn't this neat? Oh boy, this is one of my favorite spots. I can just come up here and I can reach out and get a drink of water if I want and take a shower. Yeah, this is one of my favorite spots there, yeah. I think this is just so great. There's another entrance down here too. This comes up to my balcony here, my overlook, my whatever you guys call it in humanese. I don't know. Yeah, this is nice. Well, you better go down and see how things are going at the cave sale. Time to clean everything out. there's everybody down at the tag sale. Hi, folks. How you doing?
Hi, Boone. How are you?
Hi. I'll be right down. Take a look, see if there's anything that you want down there, and I'll be right down.
Okay.
Come on down, we got lots of honey.
Oh, good. Honey. Well, here I come. I'm so glad you guys could come to my cave sale. I've had quite a few people here today already. Yep. Oh, those rocks are a little trickery.
Come on down, Ron.
I'm coming to see if I can help you out here, Eddie.
We got lots of nice stuff here we want to buy.
Oh, good. I got lots of nice stuff to sell you. Yep, I do. Hi, kids. How are you?
Very good.
Yep. Look around, see what you want.
This is a very brief woods tour on this, in this sugar woods. We're just going to stop at this one tree. And the reason I wanted to look at the one tree is we are always telling folks about the results of our forest health surveys and how 85% of the trees are healthy, 90% of the trees are healthy, they're getting better, they're better than they were last time we looked. And people say, well, that's not true in my sugar woods. And that's true in Rick's sugar woods. This is one of those places where the trees haven't been getting better. And if you look around in general, you see that the maples here are really pretty healthy. This is a nice site for maples. There's basswood growing here, there's white ash. Some of the ground cover species also tell us that this is a real good site, fertile soil for growing sugar maple. And yet there's some trees that up and died, like this one, or this one's dead but didn't know it. So we were walking around the other day trying to figure out why in this place, and quite frankly with maple often I play 20 questions. What's going on here that isn't going on somewhere else? If it's a dying elm tree, you know it's Dutch elm disease, but if it's a maple tree, it's always what's going on here. And as we looked around, we kind of realized that this is what we call a two-age stand. There's a lot of these young, straight trees. Some are maples, many are other species, pines, ash. And most of the maples that are being tapped are spreading trees that have been around a while. They have a lot of lower branches. They're trees that grew when this place was still open. A lot of them are growing on these rock outcrops. A lot of them have funny-looking root systems. This tree here has a lot of the roots coming off of one side. And when we looked at a lot of these maples closely, especially the dying ones, they almost always were growing on ledgy, rocky areas. And probably when this place was pastured, the maples were, the trees that were left alone were the ones that were a little less accessible than other ones. What also the fact that they're growing on rocks means is that their root systems are quite close to the surface and likely to be wounded. And the trees that were dying, and this is just one, there's a half a dozen scattered through the woods here, were on these rocky outcrops. And as I took kind of potluck, I asked Rick just before Maple Rama if he would cut into the tree and see if this tree had sap streak, and it does. You can tell by the sort of a faint greenish discoloration, and actually on the piece that's left you might be able to see it a little more distinctly, but often it's green fingers. This one is just sort of the green discoloration on the edge here that shows us that this tree has sap streak. Sap streak is a fungus that's related to Dutch elm disease, but it's not as much of a problem to maples as elm disease is to elms because it can't get into the trees very easily. The only ways it gets into the trees is through a wound that's near the ground line. And these trees that are growing on these rocky spots in an otherwise fertile site, but these particular spots are rocky, their roots are pretty exposed and they're really vulnerable to wounding when any kind of activity is going on in the woods. So that's how sap streak gets in to a tree, especially if these wounds are made in the spring or early summers when the trees are most vulnerable to sap streak. How do you keep sap streak from happening? Well, first of all, prevent wounding, especially if you're going to have activity in your sugar woods. Don't have it be in May and June when the sap streak disease is most likely to be transmitted. If you cut down a tree with sap streak, don't stack it right in your woods because the spores of this fungus are produced on the cut surfaces of the wood. So if you stack wood from a sap streak tree in your woods or near trees that are likely to be wounded, those are the trees that are likely to get infected from sap streak. What often happens with a sap streak either kills trees quickly or slowly. Sometimes they up and die, and sometimes it takes them years and years to die. Sometimes trees recover. This one won't. Did she fly away? While I was talking, did she fly away? Some of you saw a pigeon treemax on the side of this tree laying her eggs. They like dying wood. Those of you that saw her, she was laying eggs with the last group. I thought she'd be here by the time I was done talking, but I guess not. She's done. One other thing I want to show you with this little wedge here, trees that have sap streak often don't die of the sap streak. Actually, they die of root rot that's in the soil all the time and just takes advantage of dying trees. You often see this shoestring from the shoestring root rot, or the white flat fan of the fungus, which peels right off. Two signs that this tree has shoestring root rot disease. But without the sap streak disease, the shoestring root rot wouldn't have jumped on the roots. It only likes dying trees. Something else you see when you're going through here is maple leaf cutter. I have some back in the lab, but most of you recognize maple leaf cutter, but it's the one that makes the shot holes in the leaves. And there has been some pear thrips damage, and here's one. Some very light pear thrips damage. This year we've only seen it in the understory pretty much of the trees, but there is a little bit in this place as well. So, any questions or comments about what's going on right here? Okay, why don't we go back to the table and look at some of the stuff over there. I mentioned the shoestring root rot, another fungus that lives in the soil. This is more of a curiosity, but it was on a tree behind the sugar house that was a little harder to get to, so I brought it to you instead of making you go to it. It sticks out of the ground like that, and they call it dead man's fingers because it actually kind of looks like a bunch of fingers coming out of the ground, if you could visualize someone dead under there. But it's also another root rot that grows on trees that might have sap streak. Back in the bug world, the thing that's on many people's minds is the Asian longhorn beetle. And most of you are familiar with this. We've certainly been reading about it in the newspaper and seeing it on TV. Let's see where my beetle is. She's this critter, and Asian longhorn beetle comes from China. It came to this country on crating that was brought into this country to do a sewer project in Brooklyn. It's probably been here 5-6 years, and it's only got distributed in a 3 square mile area. It didn't move very much in Brooklyn. In fact, there's a little tiny river that separates Brooklyn and Queens right where these trees are infested. It never crossed that little tiny river. So it's not a very strong flyer. That's the good news. The bad news is that people can move this insect around pretty effectively, and the one place they have is one arborist from Long Island was cutting dead trees in Brooklyn and took the trees back to Long Island to sell as firewood, and that's how a new infestation got set up in Long Island. So there's 2 infestations where we know of in the United States where this insect got established. This insect, unlike a lot of the longhorn beetles that we know, this insect likes healthy trees and it likes healthy sugar maples. And a lot of times when there's new insects that people are talking about, you go and see them and you go, oh, that's not that big a deal. I did have a chance to look at this infestation in Brooklyn in October, and it was a big deal. It's a tree that really could devastate sugar maple, and it's a real concern. Let me show you a little bit about how to recognize it. The adult insect lays her eggs by scraping a little piece of off the bark of sugar maple, lays its eggs there. The grubs hatch. They first start tunneling underneath the bark, and after they're grown a little bigger, they start tunneling in the wood, and they can do quite a bit of damage inside the wood. Now, when you are doing this much excavation, it generates a lot of sawdust, so at the base of trees that have Asian longhorn beetle, there's often quite a bit of sawdust at the base of the trees. After the insect has been in here, it turns into a cocoon and then into adult. The adult comes out through the kinds of holes she could fit out through, or he or she could fit out through, big holes that are almost the size of a tap hole. So they're pretty obvious. They're not subtle insects. Another thing about this insect is that this is a pretty characteristic size of material it likes to infest. It likes 3, 4, 5-inch diameter wood like this. The main stem of a big sugar tree is a little big for it, except when it's already infested the little stuff. So it starts in the little stuff, then it could move into the big stuff. But if the only hole that you see is the main stem, it's probably this other something that's making. We've gotten a few calls on something that makes a hole every now and then in the main stem. Not quite sure what it is. It might actually be this Prigid Tremex that flew away. But there's something out here. We need to, if you do see it, we'd like to know about it so we can be sure what it is and how to differentiate it from the Asian beetle, so we can tell you better. This has been in the headlines, and a lot of our good citizens have brought in beetles that look like Asian longhorn beetles. And every single one of them that I've seen, and almost every one that anyone else has seen, is this insect, which I will pass around, called the white-spotted Sawyer beetle, an insect that attacks dying pine trees. It's native to this area. The way to tell it from the Asian beetle is bigger. The Asian beetle is more of a patent leather shiny. This one's sort of an iridescent shiny. And the native beetle has a distinct white spot between the tops of the wing covers, sort of between the tops of the shoulders if it was us. So 3 ways to tell the 2 insects apart. I'll pass them around and take a look at them. The white-spotted Sawyer beetle, like I say, only really likes dying wood, so it's not a really serious forest pest. Some people that build log cabins find that this insect has infested the logs, and at night they hear scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. It has got pretty tough jawbones. We don't want it here. If you see it, let us know. If you see something that looks like it, might be it, let us know. If you see one of those holes, let us know. In Brooklyn and on Long Island, they've cut down every tree that they know was infested, and sometimes that meant, you know how in a city block there'll be row houses connected all the way around the block, and there'll be a tree growing in the middle. These trees had to be cut into pieces and carried through people's living rooms to get them out. And in Brooklyn, they don't have as many trees as we do, so it's a little bigger hardship for people in Brooklyn to lose all their trees in a certain area than for us. We don't want it here. If you see it, let us know. If you see something that looks like it, might be it, let us know. If you see one of those holes, let us know. Any questions or comments on the Asian beetle? One other thing is that the good news is kind of good and bad news both. Since this big alarm about the Asian beetle, there's about a half a dozen other places throughout the United States where people have found infested crating. That's good news because it was out there anyway. They're looking more closely. They've got their eyes open. So the better chance of intercepting this insect. Don't know of any other places where trees are infested. In Brooklyn and on Long Island, they've cut down every tree that they know was infested, and sometimes that meant, you know how in a city block there'll be row houses connected all the way around the block, and there'll be a tree growing in the middle. These trees had to be cut into pieces and carried through people's living rooms to get them out. And in Brooklyn, they don't have as many trees as we do, so it's a little bigger hardship for people in Brooklyn to lose all their trees in a certain area than for us. So it was sort of a hardship for folks down there.
Barbara, will this infestation down there still be watched for the next 2 or 3 years?
Definitely, yeah. And the good news is they haven't seen any adult beetles there so far this summer. They have come up with a few new infested trees, maybe trees that were infested already last year and they didn't catch, but they haven't seen any beetles yet, and don't know what that means. But I think there's a good chance that they're being able to eradicate those 2 infestations. If that's all there is, that'll be good. The problem is if there's other stuff brewing out there we don't know about. 2 other insects I sort of want to talk about. One is the saddled prominent. Some of you remember the outbreaks in the early 80s of this insect. It's distinguished by, it often has a distinct saddle marking on its back. Even more prominent, even more diagnostic are 2 lines by the side of its head. This is a defoliator that's chewing right now. And we're seeing it, and the reason it's such a concern is this insect, by chewing leaves at this time of year, and it can completely defoliate trees, it's just when the trees are really made a lot of food is still in the leaves. If those leaves get eaten up, it hasn't gone down to the roots yet, the tree has to put out a new set of leaves. There's not enough time left in the summer for it to make a lot of new sugar from those new leaves, and so it's a big stress on the tree to lose leaves at this time of year. Often they don't harden off for the winter like they should also. This insect seems to be increasing. I was here a week or 2 ago and saw one out here, so I asked Rick to put out a bucket to see if he could catch any caterpillar droppings. And that's often all you see of saddle prominent is the insect feeds up high in the trees to start with. And so often you know it's there before you actually see it. So look on the understory vegetation, look for these caterpillar droppings, what we call frass. I'll pass this around. The other thing to look for is fragments of leaves. They're messy eaters. So often they'll leave fragments of leaves on the ground. Look for them. And they're a little more numerous. You'll see the caterpillar itself. Someone saw this on one of these trees in an earlier group. You won't see much of a saddle on this one, but it's still saddle prominent. You see the lines on the side of its face that are characteristic. It's not quite full grown. It's got another week or 2. Doesn't like my hand. It's got another week or 2 to feed, and then it'll be done. In the early part of August, it drops to the ground and spends the winter in the soil. What can you do if you know you have saddle prominent, especially if you know you have a lot of saddle prominent? In Vermont, give us a call, and we can sample for saddle prominent pretty accurately in June to give you an idea of whether you're going to be defoliated in August. It is an insect that can be sprayed from the air with BT. So it's one of the insects that we can control, and we can sample pretty accurately if we know ahead of time that we need to look at your sugar roots. Spruce bandworm, as some of you know, is a little green inchworm that defoliates in the spring of the year. It's been pretty obvious, I would say not dangerously obvious, but very obvious for the last few years. It seems to be less this year. Another spring of the year insect that you can't get away without my talking about is paratrips. This guy here. Paratrips populations in the soil coming into this year were pretty much the same as they have been, pretty on the low side. And then every spring, for the last 12 years, I've been doing bud counts in sugar maple buds in the spring, and I had the highest counts this year since 1988. In fact, in one single bud, there were 121 thrips. And even though thrips were small, that's still a lot of insects in one little sugar maple bud. And so I was pretty concerned, but actually we've got very little damage outside the understory vegetation. In that one sugar bush where there were the high counts, even there wasn't much overstory damage. Finally, the last thing I want to just mention is we do have our forest health surveys that are ongoing. This is the results from our Vermont hardwood health survey, which we do every 5 years based on 80 ground plots and hundreds of plots we look at on photographs. And the condition of the trees has been improving, as you can see from the bars here on the left. We've been doing this now for 10 years. So statewide, there haven't been a lot of insect outbreaks. Statewide, there haven't been a lot of, there's been good weather for growing trees, so the condition of maples in general has been improving. Any other questions or comments? Great, thanks.
Yeah, welcome to the cave sale. Yeah, these are paintings that I do in the wintertime when I don't have anything else to do. And those are members of my family. Those are the twins right there down at the beach. See them?
Yeah.
Yep, that's them. And over there, that's a self-portrait of me when I was just a little guy. I was just learning all about honey and things then.
Wow.
And there's my cousins. They're up there. See them?
Yeah?
Yep, those are my cousins. Yep. Oh, yeah, these are mostly from memory. Nobody ever sat and posed. I have what they call a photogenic memory, and I paint like a photograph too. See?
Yes, very good.
I think
How
I'm
much
good,
you
too.
want for them, Bruin?
Oh, let's see. Each painting would have to be probably 40 ants.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
You know how much 40 ants is in your kind of money?
No?
Well,
You'll have to tell us.
right over here, I have a little thing that says there's 10 ants to a penny, and 5 grubs to a penny,
Wow.
and 2 nuts to a penny. 1 pint of berries, though, is 50 cents. If you got a pint of honey, yeah, that's $1. But I can only take cash, NPP, which means no plastic, please. And all sales are final. I can't return anything.
Okay.
We got the honey.
Oh, you got honey?
Sure, we can get you some.
Oh, okay. How much of this stuff do you want? There's more stuff over here too, you know.
Okay.
Yep. Did you see my wood thing of the cat's face?
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. Oh, looks like she might be interested in something.
Oh, there's a lot of interesting things here.
Yeah, I got amazing raisins. Those are pretty hard to give up, but I'll take honey for those. And let's see. I've got, well, books and shirts and clothing and see my goofy mugs. I like those mugs,
Yeah,
but
they're cute.
yeah.
Now, are these places that you've been?
Those postcards? Yes, I've been to every single one of those places. But I bought double, so I have another set, but they're just taking up too much room in the cave. Those were lighthouses down at the beach. And that's one of the first books I learned how to read out of. Never quite figured out what a pet was, though. They look like bears to me.
Yeah, they do.
I think we ought to take the flea and tick.
Yes, I got rid of all my fleas and ticks. You got problems with fleas and ticks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
might have.
Yeah, what?
Probably use this.
What?
We'll get some more honey for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that works real good. Solved my problem.
Okay, Bruin.
Okay, that'd be one thing of honey. Yep.
All right,
Honey,
we'll get it.
get some honey. Oh, boy, oh, boy. Oh, look at,
Anything interesting
see,
you want?
hey, kids, anything you like? How about that nice
How about,
bear
Nice
shirt?
sweater.
Look at that.
would you like that?
Yes.
Well, he take it, Bruin.
Okay.
How much you gotta have for that?
Oh, I'll take another thing of honey, and then I'll throw in one of those joke books too. How's
Okay.
that?
He loves joke books.
Oh, he loves joke books.
Hey, you look like a guy that would like joke books.
Very
I like
good.
joke books too.
Want that bear up there? Stuffed bear?
Oh, and that's how I learned how to spell. See, that's my Hebrew alphabet coloring book.
Wow.
Isn't that neat?
Is that how
Oh.
you learned your language?
That's how I learned my language, yep. I can't speak any of it now, but I need the book to remind me.
All right.
Oh, you found a hat?
See,
He's interested in the
you
hat.
like that hat?
You like that hat? Oh, yeah, it looks real good on you.
How much is this,
Yeah.
Bruin?
Oh, we'll take some berries for that. How's
Berries,
that?
Okay.
Yeah.
we got berries.
Oh, good.
That's
2
pretty
things of
cool.
honey. But they got berries and honey. Oh boy, one of my favorite things. See anything there you
And you
need?
know,
Hold it.
I think I like this myself since I got all my hair cut off this morning.
Oh, you fell asleep in the barber shop, did you?
Look,
Oh, looks real good on you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Another quart of honey?
Well, a quart of honey or maybe, the equivalent of ants. How's that?
We'll do that.
Okay, yes, yeah, I got some honey, I got some ants, I got some berries. Oh boy, this is gonna be a
That's a
good
nice
taxi. You like that hat?
I love it.
See if I got anything else over there that you might like.
Now, is this where you're from, Bruin?
Well,
Asia?
no, that's where my ancestors are, though.
Oh.
Panda lives down in there. I think it's Panda that's from there. It might say in there somewhere about Panda Bear. I'm not too sure. Or maybe it's the Asian grizzly. Maybe it's, this is South Asia.
South Asia.
And there's an extra flashlight that if anybody wants to go down the cave, they can.
Oh, yeah. Let me see that.
And go down and look at there's some paintings on the wall that you might be interested in.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't want to be too dark down there, Bruin. I think you run the batteries dead on it.
Oh, I might have.
No problem. We'll get some. We'll
Okay.
take it.
Oh, good.
We'll take this and go down the cave with it, huh?
Oh, look out, you got a creature on your knee there. Look out. What is that?
What is it?
Oh, no, you got a creature on your knee.
Look,
Oh, that's my puppet. What am I
Oh, it
thinking?
is.
Oh, yeah. You work 'em pretty good. I thought some sort of a creature climbed up onto your knee there.
looks like he's got fleas or something.
Well, that's what I was using the flea spray for. You mean it didn't work?
He's scratching still.
Oh, I guess maybe it didn't work. You're right, he is still scratching. Uh-oh. Just spray him a little bit with that flea spray. That'll take care of it. Yeah. Yeah. See, look at them jump off now. Look at them, they're all jumping off all over the place.
Oh, they're on you now, Pete.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Well, good thing you bought that flea spray.
That'll do it.
Anything else? Anything else you want here? There's all sorts of stuff.
Bruin, how about this little sweater here? Would you like to get rid of this?
Well, yeah, that one's a hard one to get rid of because that was one of my very first ones when I was a little baby cub. But I outgrew it. So if you want it, it's yours.
I'll give you a little something for it. I'll see if I can find you some more ants, okay?
Yeah,
I think we got some.
Okay, yeah, good
Okay,
ants.
pal?
Yep, we got berries.
You're a good
Oh,
boy.
Oh, thank you, yeah. I'm having fun at this taxi, I'll tell you. Boy, these people, they like the stuff I don't like anymore. Well, I don't have any need for it anymore. Let's see. Maybe I should do this more often. Those mugs are good for coffee.
Very nice.
You like those mugs?
How much for these, Bruin?
Oh, let's see. I've got some, you have any sort of like hazelnuts or walnuts or anything like that?
I sure do. I sure do. And I can get them for you?
Okay. Good. Boy, nuts, honey, berries, ants. Oh boy, oh boy.
Bruin, you'll be able to have supper tonight, buddy.
Oh, maybe all winter long by the time I'm finished with my cave sale here. Did you see my crossword puzzle over here? I got a crossword puzzle. And I lost my dictionary, so I'm not very good at crossword puzzles.
Did you do any of it, Bruin?
No. Like I said, I lost my dictionary.
Oh, no.
Maybe we can find you one.
But it's supposedly the world's largest crossword puzzle.
Oh, that's it right there.
Sure looks like it has a lot of words.
Huge.
My goodness.
I need my dictionary, too.
Well, there's supposedly 5,000 words in there. I have trouble with 10 words, let alone 5,000.
Yes.
I bet these kids could know half of those, if not all of them, right?
They probably would, huh?
Ask Bruin how much that is. He'd sell it to you.
How much is your toy here, Bruin?
Oh, I tell you what, you guys have been so good in getting all this stuff. I'll let him have that for nothing. How's that?
Great. What do you say? Tell him thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope you have as much fun with it as I did. Oh, I lost my head. Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a little puzzle.
Oh, it's just part of the puzzle.
Bruin,
Yeah.
would you like to play cards?
Oh, I like to play cards. Did you see my deck of cards here? Those are my magic cards. Tell you what, pick a card, hold it up, and I can tell you what it is.
Okay, can you tell me what this is?
Yep, that's the Queen of Hearts. Let's see if I'm right. Wow, look at that. It's the Queen of Hearts. Want to do it again?
Well, let's
Here,
redo
shuffle them around. Yep, shuffle them back and forth. Okay, pick another card.
Okay.
I got a bee
Tell me
flying
what this
around
one
here. I bet you, let's see, it's not the ace. It's the Queen of Hearts.
Hey, you got onto my trick.
It's only one card. Well, boy, I sure am glad you folks stopped by for the tag sale. Let's see. Wait, I guess you got some berries and some nuts and ants and stuff for me.
I got some nuts, Bruin.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's see. I think that was like 5 nuts right there for that one. 4 nuts. Oh,
There you go,
boy.
pal.
Oh boy. Yeah, and I think that one was 2.
You got put 2 nuts in there for you.
Whoa, thank you very much, and I
Yeah.
hope you have fun with that, because I had a lot of fun with that when I was at your age. Oh, there's that joke book. That's three nuts, I think. Yep, there you go. Yep, you got that other thing too with it, remember? Because I threw that one in for nothing, remember? That's good. I thank everybody for coming by. Yep.
Fix that one up.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruin.
Thank you.
How much was your puppet doing?
Oh, I think I said, what, 4 nuts?
4 nuts?
Yep.
Okay. 3, 4. There you go.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Have a good trip back now.
I will. Thanks. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Morning.
Oh, how are you doing?
Good. You're Dennis Willie,
That's right.
and we're over here in Wethersfield, I guess,
Well, actually, Cavendish. We're pretty
Cavendish?
close to the line.
close to the line. And you've got a couple friends here,
Yeah.
just like part of the family, I'm sure.
Yeah, these are 2 Percheron horses, draft horses, and this is King, and that's Ben there.
Ben. Huh? And what do they weigh?
Oh, probably 18.5, I'd say.
How long have you had these?
Oh, Ben I got last winter, and King I've had him for 2 years, or I guess now, a little better.
And how did you get interested in working in the woods with horses?
Well, I used to, when younger, I grew up with horses, and I've always had riding horses, and I had draft horses years ago, and I decided I'd get another team, and I've used skidders in the woods, and I decided I wanted to use horses again, and just for my own sort of pleasure of horses, and to do things on a different scale.
What's a typical day with the horses consist of with you?
A lot
You
of
gotta
work.
have breakfast, lunch, and dinner like
Yeah.
we do?
Yeah, I bring them a lunch. This morning I fed them at 5:30. Went out and gave them oats and gave them their grain, and then they'll eat that. Then go out again, give them some hay, and give them some water, and get them ready, and get myself something. And you get up about 4:30. You can get in the woods about 8 o'clock. It's like.
And when you get ready to harness them up, how much does a harness weigh?
Well, depends, I guess. There's different harnesses, but these harnesses here, I don't know, they weigh 100 pounds or somewhere around there, maybe.
Takes a few minutes to put one on.
Yeah, not too bad after you get used to doing it. You get techniques putting them on. It's not too bad.
What kind of a bit? Do you both have the same bit?
No, he's got a just a regular snaffle. King does, and Ben he's got a call it a scissors bit in there. It's a double bit in his mouth because he's a little hot-blooded, and he tends to like to step out a little bit more. Did so that takes care of him because they're keep them even a little bit better.
And is there anything unusual about these harnesses for them because they're working in the woods? Anything different?
Not, well, they're a work harness. They're not a drive harness. They're a work harness. There's several, these are leather harness. There's some bioplastic in the breeching on these because they've been gone over a few times here. But there's nylon harnesses and bioplastic harnesses today, and leather harness, which is the standard harness. And these are mostly leather harness here.
What are some of the terms for the parts of the harness and the hitches here? Things.
Well, this is the neck yoke here, and that holds the pole up, pretty much like the back evener that pulls the load, but this is to hold the pole up and to hold the load back going down a hill. If you didn't have this on, the load
Run
would
into
travel,
their legs.
Yeah, travel right ahead. Yeah. But the hames of the harness hold it onto the collar. There's a snap here. When you put the harness on, you put the collars on separate, and then you snap your hames onto your collar. That's where the main pulling comes, right from the collar here. That's where your pull comes right off that tug there.
And do you use some voice commands with these horses?
Yeah, I use voice commands with most everything I do with them. But you have to rein them generally as a team because you put two horses together, and they act a little different generally than single. King here, I skid with him single, and he goes by himself with voice commands and just make a path once, and he'll follow it and go out to the land, and I skid alone or just bunch in the woods with him.
Well, what if you were going out and cut a hitch of wood? What are some of the concerns that you have with the team of horses? I'm sure it's different than what we'd be used to with equipment.
You have to look at the terrain and pretty much map out where you're going and generally come in. And right here I've been making I call it a marching road, get in through to wherever your timber stand that you're cutting. Sometimes you're going through a young stand or undeveloped area or something that's been cut or just isn't going to be cut, you know, at that time, and you've still got to get through an area. So you have to map it out in the type of terrain that's going to be the most efficient to get in and out with your horses.
How steep a grade would you say they can negotiate? I know it would make a difference with the size of the wood that you're pulling, but
Well, going uphill, generally you try to avoid that with loads. You try to avoid going uphill as much as you can. But as far as going uphill, I generally say if I can walk up it, so can't they. So, but coming down, you've got to be careful on your type of loads that you go through. I've got a small, this has been all uphill mostly on this job for a good share of the draw, but it's probably a, I'd call a 412 pitch maybe at best in places probably. No, that'd be a 4% grade or somewhere in there maybe.
so you're getting ready to head this direction with them to
Yeah.
to pick up some wood?
Yeah, I've just cleared this line out through here and opened the trail up, so we can go out through
Well,
there.
if I walk on ahead there and you can follow behind me, I certainly can see the path where we're
Yeah.
going. Well, you've got to consider your horses getting through here. I guess it takes a while to prepare
Yeah.
a route for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of preparation work. It's not just all falling trees and pulling timber. You've got to make a trail and, you said earlier, choose your trail and the best route and terrain that you can find. And there's a lot of dead stuff that's already been previously blown down sometimes, and different areas of woods are different.
And I guess the limbs, like in a dead spruce, that are still pretty
Yeah.
hard and pointed, as opposed to pine or something. There's a lot more
Yeah.
concern there.
It's a lot more concern in going through. When you're going empty, it isn't bad, but when you come out through, if you've got a heavy log and a ton log or two, and you horses are pulling and working hard, and it's hard on them to pull too, and rather dangerous also.
And go through an obstacle
Right,
course
go
at the
through an
same
obstacle
time.
and stepping on uneven ground hard and have to hurt themselves.
And then, as with standard practice, and when you get a route, you try to make use of it as
Right.
often as you can.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're going to drop one of these trees here and try to haul them out. I got my other cart. I have two carts that I use to haul logs with right now. One's sort of a low boy, more that I can ride on, and the other one's a high arched rig that I usually walk behind. I usually don't pull much more than 150 feet or around there with my low arched rig. Usually use smaller logs, and these are pretty good sized trees on a 16-foot log will be for the first trip out through here that be a little bit rougher.
And you'll cut it to length right here?
Yeah, I'll sometimes cut two logs if it's terrain's good. I might cut a 32, 33 log and cut two 16s out of it, or 24, and then cut them out there. But they're marked, and usually there isn't much waste out on the landing because they're cut to length